All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Indian user group meeting. My name is Brian O'Hare, and I'm the Terminology Maintenance Manager here at the MSSO. With me today from the MSSO, we have a number of our team, including Dr. Anamika Dutta, who is our local support representative in India, and many of you are probably familiar with her if you've attended any training or attended past user group meetings in India. We also have Dr. Caroline Wilson, who is a medical officer with the MSSO, and she is focused on training in the European region. And also Yoonhee Do, who is a clinical associate with the MSSO, and she is our local support representative in Korea. And she is going to be providing administrative support for this meeting today. So let's get into the agenda here. Before we get started into the presentations, we'd like to ask everyone to help make this meeting a little bit more interactive and participate in a poll. And Mika, if you could go to the next slide. So we'd just like to get a pulse and sense of who is with us today at this meeting. You see on the screen a link to our poll software. Uni will be sending that in the chat just now, so you can click on that link or put it in your browser or your smartphone to get connected to the poll. I'll just give just a few seconds here for people to do that. The votes are anonymous, so we will not be counting who you are. Okay, I'll just give a few more moments here. Okay, why don't we go to the next slide? All right, so the first question we have is, where is everyone joining from today? We've, of course, advertised this meeting as the virtual Indian user group meeting because it's most amenable to the Indian time zone, but we, as it is a virtual meeting, you can join from anywhere. So we'd be interested to know where everyone is from today. Okay, good. So obviously lots of folks in India, that's great. So a few from Europe. And we even have some early birds like myself in the United States, that's great. Okay. Very good. So it looks like we've got most everyone in India, Europe, and a couple of folks in Asia. Somebody is in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and a couple in the United States. All right, well, let's move to the next question, Anamika. All right, next question. What type of organization do you belong to? Are you a pharmaceutical company, CRO, medical device company, regulator? Okay. All right, so we've got a mix of pharmaceutical and CROs. Okay, I'll just give another moment here. Okay. All right, very good. So it looks like we've got a mix of pharmaceutical CROs with a couple of medical device and an academic institution. All right, let's move to the next. All right, so the next question is, what is your job role at your organization? Are you mostly focused on Medra coding, or are you on the data analysis side, do any kind of data management, or are you involved in the regulatory space, software developer? Okay. So it looks like we've got a number of coders and a number of folks focused on drug safety and pharmacovigilance. Very good. Okay, great. Let's move to the next slide. All right, and what is your experience with Medra? Are you new to Medra, or do you have significant experience? Okay. All right, well, looks like we're seeing a wide spectrum of experience here. We have, looks like a number of you that are very new to Medra. Quite a number of you have over 10 years of experience, and then everyone else falls in between in a relatively equal distribution there of around 20 to close to 30% of our audience today. That's interesting. Okay, well, that's very good. We like to see that kind of nice distribution. All right, let's go to the next question. Now, these last two questions are focused on our training initiative in India. And as everyone, of course, is quite aware, the MSSO, as well as many other organizations, have had to switch to a virtual space for training and other kinds of services that we deliver. And we're really interested to know, how soon, for those that may want to participate in face-to-face training in India, when they think would be a good time to do that. So we have 4 answers there: 3rd quarter of this year, 4th quarter of this year, 1st quarter of next year, or you're not sure. Okay, so we have a lot of folks that are not sure, which is understandable. So it looks like everyone's leaning towards sometime next year, or they're not sure. That's perfectly understandable. We'd like to just, that's very helpful feedback for us to understand what everyone's general thoughts are on that, and when we think it's going to be acceptable to start up the face-to-face training program in India. Okay, and I think our final question, Anamika. Okay, again, focused on training in India. I'm going to assume this question is in a post-COVID-19 world. So assume that the COVID-19 situation is behind us. Are you willing to travel to attend face-to-face training in India? So either yes or no, you prefer the webinars, the virtual space, or you're not sure that you want to travel. Okay, great. I think we got a nice answer there from the audience. So it looks like a number of you would prefer the virtual space. Probably looks like half, and then the remainder, looks like a third or so, are focused on, would be willing to travel. Well, thank you for that. So let's move on to the next slide, Anamika. Okay, so we have a full agenda today. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at that. You'll see that we have a panel discussion and a presentation on COVID-19. We also have a medication errors and product issues presentation. And time permitting, we'll provide a demonstration of the Medra web-based browser with respect to COVID-19 terms, and there'll be time at the end for a Q&A. Before we get to the first presentation, I just wanted to alert and make everyone aware of 2 upcoming virtual meetings that you might be interested in. You can go to the next slide. So the first meeting is next week. It is what we'll call an open session. There's 2 dates for that. It's the 30th and 31st of March. I highlighted the session that's most amenable to the Indian time zone. And if you've never attended these meetings, this is a relatively new format where the title is exactly what it says. It's an open session. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions of the MSSO on Medra topics, specific questions about Medra itself, software tools that we provide, the other services like training, or any other Medra-related topics. So if you haven't attended one of these, I encourage you to do so. You can attend either one of those dates, and we would love to see you there. Next slide, please. Okay, and the last item I wanted to make everyone aware was we do have another virtual user group meeting next month on the 20th of April. This is focused on the European time zone, and the registration is open now. The topic or the theme of this meeting is Medra in COVID-19 vaccine safety. So it is a nice follow-on discussion to what is going to be discussed today. So I encourage you to register for that meeting, and we'd love to see you there as well. Okay, well, I think we're ready now to move into the presentations. The first presentation we have is by Dr. Lubina Alge, who's going to provide a presentation to us on medication errors and product issues. Dr. Alge is a pharmacist with specialization in epidemiology and is currently working in the public health sector with the Moroccan Anti-Poisoning and Pharmacovigilance Center, as well as the WHO Collaboration Center for Strengthening Pharmacovigilance Practices. She has had 18 years of experience with the Moroccan Anti-Poison and Pharmacovigilance Center. In 2006, she put in place their medication errors management unit. So please welcome Dr. Alge. We'll turn the presentation over to her. Okay.
Thank you, dear Brian. Do you hear me well? It's okay?
Yes, we do.
Yes. So I will share my presentation now. It's okay?
Yes, we can see it fine. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brian. So good evening, dear colleagues and participants. I am delighted to take part of the virtual Indian meeting for Medra users. And it is my pleasure to share with you my presentation about the use of Medra for medication errors, coding, and product issues. Medication errors are one of the aspects of the unsafe use of drugs, and they have considerable health consequences. Worldwide, several organizations are dealing with medication errors, such as patient safety organizations, pharmacovigilance centers, poison control centers, and marketing authorization holders. So the use of a standardized and harmonized data entry of medication errors reports is crucial to compare the epidemiological profile and the characteristics of medication errors data between organizations and across time and borders. So this is the rationale behind the use of Medra. As you know, Medra goes for Medical Dictionary for Regulatory Activities, which is a standardized and validated clinical terminology used in both clinical developments and post-marketing surveillance. The purposes of Medra are to facilitate the exchange of clinical information through standardization. Medra is also helpful to be used as a tool for medical product evaluation, monitoring, communication, electronic record exchange, and also for oversight and surveillance of these products. Medra also supports coding and data entry of clinical information, but also retrieval and analysis. And it's about human medical products, including pharmaceuticals, biologics, vaccines, and drug device combination products. So as part of this clinical information, Medra enables capturing adverse drug reactions, including medication errors. So according to a Medra concept, medication errors are defined as any preventable event that may cause or lead to inappropriate medication use of patient harm while the medication is in the control of the healthcare professional, the patient, or the consumer. Such events may be related to the professional practice, the healthcare products, procedures, and systems, including prescribing, order communication, product labeling, packaging, and nomenclature, compounding, dispensing, distribution, administration, but also education, monitoring, and use of these products. So what are the specificities and particularities of coding medication errors within Medra? So first of all, a hierarchy of medication errors and product issues is available in Medra. And it is as part of the system organ class injury, poisoning, and procedural complication, as you see here. So this hierarchy was revised in Medra version 20, and it includes errors and unspecified use issues separately from intentional use of drugs, such as off-label use, misuse, and intentional overdose. So this is very helpful to make the difference between these situations. Medication errors are an intentional use of drugs in contrast with the intentional use, such as off-label use, misuse, and intentional overdose. So first, I will begin by providing general guidance for coding medication errors. So when considering a same incident, when we have a same medication error report, the terms for all reported errors should be selected. So the originating error should be coded as the priority. Then the additional or consequent errors can be coded if they are stated in the report. We should avoid double coding the same error, and we should not use the same and the similar low-level terms to code a singular error. Also, it is recommended of course, to use the term that we are going to select that should be the most specific one that describes the medication error report that we received. And we should avoid to use the term medication error to code a medication error because it's not very specific and we will not have an idea about the medication error unless there is no other information reported about this medication error. So the Medra terminology allows coding medication errors taking into account their characteristics, such as the type of medication error report, the stage in the medication use process, the type of medication errors, and the root cause. So we will have examples for each situation and each type of classification of these medication errors. So first, we have the types of medication error reports. So in fact, according to the European Medicine Agency and for pharmacovigilance purposes, medication errors may be classified as medication error that reach the patient and associated with harm, medication error that reach the patient but without leading to harm. We have intercepted medication errors, and these situations indicate that caused a break in the chain of the medication use process event before reaching the patient. And the situation of potential medication errors, which are situations where we recognize circumstances that could lead to a medication error. We are going to have examples for this scenario right now. So regarding medication error with adverse drug reactions, we should select terms for both the medication error and the clinical consequences. For example, we received as a pharmacovigilance center a patient who experienced hypotension following the administration of 2 tablets of his antihypertensive drug per day instead of 1 tablet a day accidentally. So the low-level terms, first we are going to check if the report meets the medication error definition and then code this medication error. So we have the term incorrect dose administered to be selected, as well as hypotension regarding the clinical consequences. In case of a medication error without harm, only terms describing the medication errors are selected. For instance, a patient who took 2 capsules of paracetamol 1 gram instead of 1 capsule, the patient thought that it was paracetamol 500 milligrams. So the most accurate term would be wrong drug strength administered. Regarding intercepted medication errors, we have the term intercepted medication error if the stage in the medication use process is not known and not reported in the report. But we have also this term of intercepted medication error combined with the stage of medication use process when it is stated. So we have intercepted product administration, dispensing, monitoring, preparation, selection, and storage. We have also the term intercepted wrong patient selected to code situations related to patient identification issues. So here is an information about the medication report received in Morocco. So it is a hospital pharmacist reported he dispensed 1 exemestane was not administered because the patient's son checked the drugs and detected the error. So the low-level terms that were selected for this medication error, we have the lookalike packaging, as you see in this photo, and this is the originating error that led to an intercepted drug dispensing error. And if the error reached the patients, the wrong drug would have been administered. So that's why we also add the wrong drug. For potential medication errors, the term circumstance or information capable of leading to medication error is available to code such as situations. For example, a pharmacist in Morocco, we have received this case, that reported that carvedilol 6.25 milligram packaging were similar to the 25 milligram, and that could have been result in a patient receiving the wrong strength. Then the low-level terms that we selected were lookalike packaging, as you see in the photo, circumstance of information capable of leading to medication error, and it was regarding the strength, so we add wrong strength. The medication use process encompasses activities during which a medication error could occur. So the stages of the medication use process available in Medra are regarding storage, prescribing, selecting, preparing, dispensing, administering, and monitoring, while the medication is in the control of the healthcare professional, patient, or consumer. Activities related to the entire manufacturing process, including manufacturer or wholesaler, distribution and storage, are not considered as medication errors for in Medra concept. We have also possibilities to code the type of medication errors, and we have terms such as wrong drug dosage form, wrong dosage formulation, dose, drug, rate, route, patient, schedule, or strength. And we have these terms that are combined with the stage in medication use process when it is stated. So we could have for wrong drug administered, wrong drug selected, dispensed, prescribed, or stopped. So all this information are very helpful for us to describe as much as possible our medication error report using Medra. Coding the root cause analysis is also possible in Medra. For example, regarding product quality issues, we have these terms: product label issue, product leaflet missing, product expiration date eligible, and failure of child-resistant product closure. Another frequent contributing factor, as well, errors to look alike and sound alike issues are also available in Medra, and they are grouped in the high-level term product confusion errors and issues. They could be related to the label or to the packaging or to naming confusion. So in the Moroccan Pharmacovigilance Center, we received a report from a pharmacist that dispensed Lamictal instead of Lamictal. Lamictal is an antifungal drug and Lamictal is anti-epileptic drug, because the names are similar, and we have also the problem that the writing of the prescriber was not clear. So the patient took only one tablet of Lamictal. We were lucky that it was just one. So the low-level terms that were selected for this situation, we have the drug name lookalike, that are the originating problem, the contributing factor here. And of course, we have also another contributing factor, which is the written prescription eligible, that led to the incorrect drug administered. So that's why we select these terms. Root causes belonging to transcribing errors and communication issues are also existing in Medra, and we have one term related to computerized prescriber order entry error. So following an example that is very frequent in Morocco, so the medication error is about taking 2 tablets of azithromycin per day instead of 1 tablet per day, because the pharmacist's instructions were not clear. So the most accurate term for this situation was the fact that patient misunderstanding healthcare provider instructions for product use, and this led to the inappropriate schedule of drug administration. So we have the originating medication error, and it is here a contributing factor due to communication issues, and the error was the inappropriate schedule of drug administration. Another frequent factor that we have see is the fact about the eligible handwriting prescription. So here is an example of a prescription regarding a patient who was administered Ondoxan. This is the first drug in this prescription. So it was administered instead of Triaxan, which is Ondoxan is cyclophosphamide and Triaxan is ceftriaxone. So it was because the pharmacist misread the drug name due to illegible writing of the prescriber. So we have the fact that we have a written prescription illegible, the wrong drug was dispensed, and the wrong drug was administered. So, following the step of medication error data entry using the most specific and accurate terms, we need to extract and analyze our data. So, for that purpose, Medra develops standardized Medra queries regarding medication errors in order to standardize and facilitate retrieval of suspected medication errors. So 2 SMQs are available in Medra: narrow preferred terms related to medication errors and broad preferred terms. Those SMQs are very helpful to retrieve data, but also to better compare medication errors data between organizations. In conclusion, Medra is a rich terminology that supports and facilitates medication errors data entry. It allows to selection of coding terms related to medication errors with high specificities and analytical quality. And Medra provides a high degree of granularity that results in more accurate representation of medication errors data and medication errors we received as a pharmacovigilance center or any other organization. So the adequate and proper coding of medication errors is key to analyze this data, to detect signals about medication errors, and to design risk minimization measures to ensure patient safety. So thank you for your attention, and I hope that it was instructive and helpful.
Thank you, Lubna, for this very interesting presentation and for the many examples that you have provided based on your really extensive experience. So we have two questions, but I think that at least one of them has already been answered during the presentation. So there was a question whether you would also present examples where double coding is needed so where splitting is needed. But I think that you have addressed diverse splitting scenarios with the interceptive dispensing error due to product packaging confusion and then selecting in addition wrong drug, for instance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also when it came to the root cause analysis and which LLTs to select. But there seems to be some unclarity still around this double coding, so splitting necessity. There was one question, it was mentioned to avoid double coding of medication errors. So can we code underdose and inappropriate drug schedule in one patient?
Underdose and inappropriate schedule?
Yes, I think there is a misunderstanding regarding the splitting requirement. Okay. You mentioned that no splitting is necessary when it comes to the LLT level, correct?
Yes, of course. But regarding the LLT, for example, if I say that the wrong dose, wrong drug was administered, and then to say that the wrong drug was administered. So these two terms were we have the same information. So it is better to use the wrong drug administered term instead to say the wrong drug only and the wrong drug administered. So if we have, for example, this situation, we should choose only the wrong drug administered, if it is stated, of course, in the report. That's why, for example, we have some problems of saying we are going to say wrong drug administered, and maybe another thing about the wrong drug. So if it is the same thing, we should avoid to say it. But if we have different rationale behind using the different terms, here we should say it. For example, the root causes, why we split this on different terms, because if it is due to labeling, we should say that it is due to labeling. If we are going, it is regarding to naming, we should state it. But when we have the same error, we should not say it in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Luna. There's another question now that came in. Could you tell us how we should interpret inactive PTs, so non-current LLTs under the medication error SMQ? And are they still useful in some way, the non-current LLTs?
Yes, of course. We use the SMQs and PTs when we have when we do signal detection. It is done using the preferred terms because they are going to give us an overview and a general, maybe a more general term about the medication error. For example, if you have incorrect dose prescribed that we have this signal that came up in our database, we are going to make risk minimization actions, and first we are going to do the root cause analysis of these cases in order to understand why there is the problem. So we have the term intercept, for example, incorrect dose prescribed, and then the low-level terms will give us more information when we are going to go more deeply in the cases. So the preferred terms is very helpful for this for signal detection, and the risk minimization actions would be, for example, for this case, to make training for our healthcare professionals. It will depend on the drugs also, because we can combine several factors in this medication error. So if we find that it is stated prescribing doses and it is related to chemotherapy, we are going to make a training, and we are going to do root cause analysis to find to detect the root causes of these prescribing and doing risk minimization actions. So PTs are used to do signal detection. For example, in our case at the Pharmacovigilance Center, using the VG-Flow and the Visualize tool of the WHO.
Thank you, Lubna. Thank you for addressing this SNQ question. I mixed up the LLTs with the PTs. Sorry for that. So it was about the inactive PTs. So no more questions. So thank you again for your presentation. I give it back to Brian now. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Lubna, and we want to now move into our next presentation, which will be on Medra and COVID-19, a pharmacovigilance program of India perspective. That's our guest speaker for this is Rishi Kumar. Rishi has more than 15 years experience in academics, research and pharmacovigilance. He is a pharmacist and alumni of BIT Mirza Ranchi. Presently, he's working as a scientific assistant at the Indian Pharmacopedia Commission, Ghaziabad. Rishi has been part of the training program at the Pharmacovigilance Program of India, and for the last 7 years, he has trained his team members in pharmacovigilance quality management systems. So without further delay, please welcome Rishi. Rishi, I don't think we can hear you. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Good afternoon, all. Myself, Rishi Kumar, and thank you, Brian, for a nice introduction. And today, my topic of presentation is Medra and COVID-19 pharmacovigilance program of India perspective. So, my slides are not moving here. Yeah, now it's visible. So, yeah. So, content of my presentation will be, I'll briefly discuss about the structure of pharmacovigilance program of India, sources of information that from which we are getting the information related to adverse drug reactions, And I briefly touched the topic that have been given to me, that what is the experience of PVPI with reference to COVID-19. And advisory by Government of India for prophylaxis of COVID-19 has been issued, and I will touch on this topic, that how pharmacovigilance program of India played a vital role while collecting the information related to the drugs used in prophylaxis or treatment of COVID-19. Next, I will give a brief overview of the data collected during this COVID pandemic up to 31st December 2020. Now, next I'll give some introduction about the tools that we are using for the pharmacovigilance activity. As you see that the structure of pharmacovigilance program of India is being handled as headquartered at CDSU. That next Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission is working as National Coordination Center, and it is being handled by steering committee, working group, and is equally supported by 3 panels, that is signal review panel, core training panel, and quality review panel. Each committee and panels have their distinguished functions. Like steering committee has the administrative kind of work, and working group is responsible for the establishment of PV structure in India and giving giving a recommendation to CDSU for based on the recommendation from the signal review panel and other activity. Next, we have signal review panel, which is responsible for, which is a group of scientists and experts from pharmaceutical industries and academics as well as regulators, doing the signal detection at the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. And next, we have core training panel, which suggested about the various kind of trainings that we need for the upliftment of the pharmacovigilance system in the country. Next, we have quality review panel, which is responsible for standard operating procedures and quality review of ICSRs and other quality related activities that we have been guided by the group of experts. Next, we are equally supported by the more than 346 ADR monitoring centers to collect the data related to adverse drug reactions. And here we are equally supported by the CDSU, that is National Regulatory Authority of India, which stands for Central Drug Standard Control Organization. And we are being supported by the voluntary reporters reporting through consumers, patients, as well as healthcare professionals. We are also receiving information from the pharmaceutical industries and marketing authorization holders and various health programs also. So PVPI data sources are and that, as I earlier explained, that patients, national health programs, marketing authorization holders, and ATR modeling center. We are receiving the ICSRs or reports related to these adverse drug reactions from these sources. PVPI have collaboration with various national health programs like National Tuberculosis Elimination Programs. We have 21 centers all across India, from which we are collecting the information related to drugs used in TB program. Next, we have National AIDS Control Organization. Here we have 17 centers all across India, from which we are receiving the adverse drug reaction related information from by the drugs which are being used in this particular program. Next, we have National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program, in which we have 58 centers, and our special focus is on drugs which are being used for the treatment of Kala Azar. Next, we have collaboration with Universal Immunization Program, in which we used to receive information related to AFI, adverse event following immunization, to the PVPI. Next, these are our ADR monitoring center. As I earlier said, currently we have 346 ADR monitoring center all across India, and we are continuously in the process of expansion. We are continuously increasing these centers in near future, and we have in our structure we have near about 175 pharmacovigilance associates, those dedicatedly working for the activities of pharmacovigilance program of India. Now, This is an advisory issued in starting of this COVID-19 pandemic by the government of India, in which they states that the prophylactic use of hydroxychloroquine to be coupled with pharmacovigilance for adverse drug reactions through self-reporting using the Pharmacovigilance Program of India helpline and our ADR, PVPI ADR app. If anyone becomes symptomatic while on prophylaxis, he should immediately contact the health facility or get tested as per the national guideline and then follow the standard treatment protocol as per this advisory. NCC PVPI provided safety profile of hydroxychloroquine and other drugs used in the prophylaxis and treatment of COVID-19 following this advisory, and this particular advisory was updated based on the recommendation from the Pharmacovigilance Program of India. Now, this one was the form, suspected ADR means adverse drug reaction reporting form, specifically modified for the drugs which are used for prophylaxis and treatment of COVID-19. In this form, we have highlighted the common side effects or common adverse drug reactions due to the use of the drugs, and we have received a good number of adverse drug reactions from the healthcare professional who has consumed the drug for the prophylaxis of COVID-19.
Sorry, we have a question. Could you maximize the slides, because some attendees do not? Yeah.
Just a minute. I'm doing. I'm sorry. Here we do not have the options of expansion of the slide because it is on the display mode.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
No issue. Now, next we have number of cases reported to PVPI database. Data mining was done for the following drugs: hydroxychloroquine and remdesivir. It was done for 1st Jan 2020 to 31st December 2020. And regarding hydroxychloroquine, we have received 1,293 ICSR, and for remdesivir, we received 621 ICSR. If we do the analysis of these drugs and in the number of adverse events reported SOC-wise, here we display the top 5 SOCs like cardiac disorders, skin and subcutaneous tissue disorders, generalized disorders, and administration site conditions, nervous system disorders, and gastrointestinal disorders. And, these are the top 5 SOCs that have been reported by the use of hydroxychloroquine. Yeah. Next, we have SOC-wise classification or top 5 SOC and number of adverse events reported in these particular SOCs due to use of remdesivir are skin and subcutaneous tissue disorders, gastrointestinal disorders, investigations, injury, poisoning, and procedural complications, general disorders, and administration site conditions. Next, this is the data of top 5 preferred term in PVPI database with respect to COVID-19, and especially with reference to use of hydroxychloroquine and remdesivir. In the use of hydroxychloroquine, the top 5 PT go dizziness, gastritis, nausea, headache, diarrhea. Similar in case of remdesivir, top 5 preferred term were nausea, off-label use, say as in the case of COVID-19, that adverse event have been reported there, and drug ineffective. These were the preferred terms reported during the use of this COVID-19. The channels or tools that we used for collection of ADRs in PVPI are the, as I discussed in the advisory, it was noted that ADR PVPI app. Next, we have helpline number, which is functional on Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5:30. And afterwards, there's a system that if somebody wants to report, there's a recording system is available at India. that the information related to adverse drug reactions get recorded here, and it is being noted by the system. Next is ADR reporting form, as I discussed, and then we are having good structure of ADR monitoring center all across India. So these are the tools that we have used. That's all about our experience of COVID-19. I'm happy to answer if somebody has some questions. Yes, Brian.
Oh, I just wanted to ask if there had any questions come in. If not, I'm sure if there is a question at the end of the Q&A, session at the end of our agenda, we can answer it then. Oh, here we go. I think we've got one. Okay. Carol Ann, can I have you help me?
One question, Rashid. What is the dose given for HCQ and remdesivir for COVID-19?
It was as per the guideline. It was 400 mg, and it was for 2 days. I think first 2 days, and subsequently some guidelines were there. Subsequently 400 mg in a weekly manner for up to I think 4 to 5 weeks. 4 weeks, up to 4 weeks. It was.
Thank you. And what type of off-label use are you seeing for remdesivir?
Yeah, off-label use, initially that drug was not approved for this particular indication of COVID-19, but the healthcare professionals were using this drug for the treatment of COVID-19, and that's why our pharmacovigilance associate at AMC coded it as off-label use.
Thank you. And another one, were these reported signals analyzed with a disproportionality analysis to assess a signal of disproportionate reporting?
Yes, for signal detection, we are using this disproportionality analysis as available in Visualize, and through Visualize and VisiFlow, both the way. And additionally, we are having our signal detection panel or signal review panel, and that they vet the analysis done by the team of signal detection at the National Coordination Center, and further they vet the signal.
And it seems, based on the slides, that this was quite common with remdesivir. Is this true?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm sorry, I didn't got your question properly.
So was this common with remdesivir? As the slides say so, it seems like it was quite common during the therapy with remdesivir.
Yes. The adverse events they reported that I shown in my slides are quite common. That is what you're saying.
And then the last one, it's just a comment. There seem to be too many adverse events. The PT adverse event is reported quite frequently, and this points at a data quality issue somehow in data quality and reporting as well.
Yes. The data quality and the reports that we are receiving from our ADR monitoring center, the quality of that reports are very good, because these reports are actively collected by our pharmacovigilance associate at the AMC, that whose responsibility to collect all the information related to particular event or adverse drug reactions related to use of drugs. So the information that we received at NCC is comparatively good.
And
in terms of quality.
Thank you. And another question, shall we report the COVID AEs through SUGAM portal, SUGAM portal?
SUGAM portal, that portal is at the end of National Regulatory Authority, that is CDSO, and probably they have shown some standard operating procedure for that. As of now, at NCC, we are not aware of that system of SUGAM portal, that how they they are going to do. As of now, only National Fertility Center is doing the activities of pharmacovigilance.
Thank you. So far, no more question, Rishi. So I hand back to Anamika now.
Yes.
Anamika, we can't hear you.
Anamika, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was on mute. Thank you, Rishi and Lubna, for the presentation so far. And now it's time for us to move on to the next item on the agenda, and which is the panel discussion. So dealing with the unprecedented challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a significant toll on the people across the globe, and the clinical research industry is no exception. And the panel discussion today would revolve around the COVID-19 and Medra coding and data analysis. Uni, can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. And here are the presenters for this session, and you see the pictures on your screen. So I would be joined by my colleague, Dr. Carol Ann Wilson, and you've been hearing her from some time now. And she has joined us from Berlin. So Carolyn, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, everyone. Yes, I've joined the MSSO 2 years ago. I'm mainly responsible for training and also involved in some S&Q maintenance activities. I was with pharmaceutical industry for many years before. I'm a physician by training, and I've worked in pharmacovigilance as well as in clinical development, and during 10 years, I've led the central coding organization at Bayer Pharmaceuticals. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn, for the brief introduction. And the other one is me, and you see me live again. So I joined MSSO about 2 years back, and I work as a medical officer responsible for the local support in India. And before I joined MSSO, I worked in the industry, and I've handled the clinical coding and medical data review process. Uni, can we just move the slide now? Okay, now let me quickly introduce our panel members today. So the first panelist for today is Vibin Jose, who is Director, Clinical Data Management, IQVIA. Hello, Vibin. Mr. Vibin Jose has 16 years of experience in clinical research industry, and in his current role of Director, CDM at IQVIA, he manages the functional department which provides data management and medical coding services to various customers. With strong domain knowledge in data management, Vibin has been playing critical roles in driving quality measures, customer engagement, and growth across multiple accounts and business operations in data management. Vibin holds a master's degree in biotechnology and postgraduate diploma in bioinformatics. Welcome, Vibin, as a panelist, and we look forward to hear from you on the CRO perspective, especially with respect to clinical coding and data management. So thank you again for joining in today. Our next panelist today, you need the next, yeah, thank you, is Dr. Sharad Rao, who is a senior pharmacovigilance manager at Syneos Health. Dr. Sharad Rao is an MD physician by training with over 13 years of experience in clinical research field. During his tenure, he has worked in various departments like regulatory, medical writing, and monitoring and pharmacovigilance. Dr. Rao has extensive experience in clinical and post-marketing aggregate safety reports, search string preparation, signal detection and assessment, and as well as review of individual safety reports. Currently, Dr. Rao is working with Syneos Health as a program manager, and he's a subject matter expert for various programs. Thank you, Dr. Rao, for joining the panel today, and we look forward to hear from you on the post-marketing pharmacovigilance perspective.
Thank you, Anamika.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Next panelist for today is Martin A.O. Menke, and who is a global medical coding lead at CSL Behring. Martin has joined us from Limburg, Germany today. Thank you, Martin. And Martin graduated in microbiology at the University Kiel, Germany, following 10 years of cancer research at the university. Martin started his career in pharmacovigilance with Merck KGaA, and was also associated with Mundi Pharma Limburg, Germany as Senior Pharmacovigilance Manager. Martin joined CSL Behring in 2015, and in his current role as Global Medical Coding Lead, Martin is responsible for the medical concept management in drug safety and pharmacovigilance. And in his current role, Martin is supporting case processing, signal detection, risk management processes. Martin has diverse expertise in pharmacovigilance, such as case processing, leading implementation of new PV database, PV quality management, signal detection, and risk management processes. Martin has been an active European Medra user community as a part of EU Focus Group steering committee since 2009, and he became the chair of the Medra Focus Group in March 2017. Thank you for Martin for joining us today, and we look forward to hear from you on the sponsor perspective. The last panelist for today is Dr. Jayaprakash, who is a senior scientific officer and officer in charge at the National Coordination Center Pharmacovigilance Program of India, Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission IPC. Dr. Jayaprakash holds a doctorate from the Department of Pharmacology of All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. And at present, he is the senior principal scientific officer and officer in charge at the National Coordination Center for Pharmacovigilance Program of India at the IPC, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, Ghaziabad. Dr. Jayaprakash has more than 20 years of experience in the areas of teaching, research, administration, pharmacovigilance, pharmacopoeia, and formulatory sciences. He has been a temporary advisor and expert for WHO's Expert Committee, Geneva, Switzerland. And he is a member of the Expert Committee for Allergens, member of Institutional Human Ethics Committee, National Institute of Biologicals, Noida, Multidisciplinary Expert Committee of National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, New Delhi, Scientific Body of the Pharmacopoeia Commission for Indian Medicines and Homeopathy. Dr. Jayaprakash also served as a member for core group of revision of National List of Essential Medicines in 2011, India, and a member of CDCO Expert Committee for Trace Test. Dr. Jayaprakash has several presentations in national and international conferences and many national and international publications and book chapters to his credit. Thank you, Dr. Jayaprakash, for joining us today, and we look forward to hear from you on the PBPI perspective of our discussion today. With this, we would like to, kick off our panel discussion. So Uni, could we just, we have divided this into two sections. The first section we will discuss about Medra coding and COVID-19. So I would request the audience, if you have any comments on the questions that we're going to be asking the panelists, so you might want to, post it in our chat box. All right, so let's get on with the first question. And now I would like to ask the panelists, what kind of COVID-19 terms do you see are getting frequently reported in your database? Are these mainly diagnosis or signs and symptoms, or side effects, or medications or vaccines? So Vibin, would you like to go first?
Okay. First of all, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be part of this elite panel. So as we know, the global pandemic has created several challenges across industries, but it has also provided many opportunities for process and technology-driven innovations in our industry as well, including medical coding. Coming to the question, as per the trend that we observe, the data reporting for coding can be categorized majorly on COVID trials and non-COVID trials. Within the COVID trials, we have the treatment studies, which again can be categorized into studies conducted on hospitalized patients and studies conducted on outpatients with asymptomatic or mild COVID. Majority of the COVID-19 related terms reported on hospitalized patient studies are diagnosis or complications associated with COVID, like pneumonia, respiratory infections, or respiratory failure, even COVID-19 aggravated, etc. Advanced respiratory symptoms like dyspnea, hypoxia, or general symptoms like fatigue are normally seen reported as associated symptoms of COVID. Most of the patients in these studies, are above 50 years of age and or have underlying medical conditions like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, or chronic lung diseases. We have also noticed a lot of data getting reported in the concomitant procedure panel for intensive care support like mechanical ventilation, high intensity oxygen therapy, etc. In terms of studies conducted on outpatients with asymptomatic or mild COVID, we receive a mix of diagnosis and COVID-related, the common signs and symptoms like fever, cough, shortness of breath, or worsening of all these conditions. Only 10 to 20% of reported terms are investigations in COVID studies. So most of them are like COVID test positive, elevated D-dimer or elevated enzyme, liver enzymes, etc. On the other side, if you look at the vaccine studies, most of the terms are related to minor vaccine side effects like administration site reactions or hypersensitivity reactions, chills, etc. We do see some amount of COVID-19 related terms like pneumonia or even respiratory infections reported here as well, but very minimal cases. If you look at non-COVID trials, we are seeing a very good population of patients getting exposed to COVID-19. When you look at the data, around 55% of the terms we are getting for non-COVID trials are infections and infestations associated with COVID. And you will also see around 30% of the terms are investigations. So it's majorly the diagnostic test due to patients getting exposed or contracting COVID. Even terms like home quarantine getting reported in procedure panels for non-COVID trials. So these are the different categories of COVID-19 related terms getting reported in general for Medra coding, Anamika.
Thank you, Vipin. I would come back to a question that I have, but I would like to, hear from the other panelists. Dr. Jayaprakash, would you like to, go next on what patterns do you see there?
Dr. Anamika, and for giving my generous introduction. And I also congratulate you and your whole team of MSSO for organizing this important virtual training for the Medra users. Now, as far as this question on the type of the COVID-19 terms is concerned, now majority of the drugs used in this situation, they are the repurposed drugs. The vaccines have just recently come into action, and that drive has been launched in India. So during the use of the repurposed drugs, now we have observed the reactions, the terminologies like the diarrhea, headache, nausea, gastritis, and dizziness. With these have been the 5 top reported terminologies on account of use of the hydroxychloroquine for the prophylaxis and treatment of the COVID-19. Then the drug ineffectiveness, the off-label use, and nausea. Such terms have been come across with the use of remdesivir, and nausea, off-label use, diarrhea, and these also remain the top terms for the use with the drug like the azithromycin.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Jayaprakash. Dr. Rao, would you like to, tell us about your experiences?
Thank you, Anamika. I think Vipin and Dr. Jay has covered a lot of points. So my main experience is with post-marketing experience. And in post-marketing, like how already we've been told, there are vaccine reactions, local reactions, and some of the some are related to even COVID itself. As we know, when COVID started, few used to have milder symptoms and few used to have severe thromboembolic events also, right? Because it creates a hypercoagulable state. So coagulation increases. So something which we are seeing with vaccines also nowadays. So that's one of the things. And few others are like how we've been mentioned: COVID positive, COVID negative test, false positive, false negative. So the sensitivity or specificity of the vaccine or even the tests, those things are reported. And we are getting few other treatments also, like if you see doxycycline and minocycline, we are getting few tetracycline groups we found. Even though they are antibiotics, they might be used as used to given as secondary infections. They, at a low dose, both are all the tetracycline groups are MMP inhibitors, matrix metalloprotein inhibitors. And as we see in COVID, the harm to the body is not done mainly because of the virus. It's because of the reaction what our body gives, the incapability of our regulatory T cells to stop that overzealous reaction in the body, the cytokine storm. So these antibiotics are found to actually soothe the effect. And somehow with these studies itself, they found that corticosteroids, it's like COVID is a coronavirus, right? It's like any common cold, and any antihistamine what we take, something like that, which will blunt the effect. Similarly, like doxycycline or even corticosteroid can reduce the severity by helping the body to regulate this cytokine storm. So we found that, and I think in many of the places now off-label use for this tetracycline group is COVID-19, and they have been established as anti-inflammatory now, along with other drugs like montelukast or fexofenadine, what you take normally, right? So these are our terms what we found through COVID data mining. Actually. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you, Dr. Sharath, for sharing that. Martin, what about you? What do you see at your organizations? Martin, I think you are on mute.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, Martin. Thank you.
Now. Good. Yes, I think CSL Behring, we're operating in the biologicals area, and we have clinical trials, and we have products specifically for patients which are immunocompromised a lot. They have autoimmune disease or have an immunodeficiency. So what we see in the pharmacovigilance part, in the post-marketing area, we do see reports that people are really concerned of getting infected. We do not get so many infection reported as AEs, but we get them. We get the whole lot of COVID-19 terminology available that is coded. But we also have that concern about getting getting infected. We have the set of test results being positive or negative, false or correct. We have the concomitant diseases correlated with COVID-19 or co-suspected. People get vaccinated nowadays, so as co-suspected for their reactions, they are reported also for our products. And last but not least, we have clinical trials with the indication of COVID-19. So for our hyperimmunoglobulins and other products, and naturally there we have the COVID-19 spectrum of terms being reported or documented as indication. So we get the whole lot, but there is no specific trend other than that has been said before. So it's the thing that is to be expected for the profile of products the company has.
Okay. So I would now like to ask this question to Vibin basically mainly, and I'm sure it would be it is kind of applicable to all of you as well. So so when you see these signs and symptoms getting reported, so do you query quite often to check if these is actually COVID or it is like? So how often have you created queries to kind of confirm as a part of your coding, data mining or cleaning of data for coding like?
Yes, Anamika, that's a very good question. In fact, that was one among our challenges after the pandemic has started. We see many of, for example, if the study indication is a respiratory related, and if you see that a pneumonia is getting reported, then we are obviously asking the site to clarify if it is a COVID-19 pneumonia associated. So there are many signs and symptoms. We are querying the site for non-COVID trials specifically.
You also brought up an interesting thing that you mentioned, that you see quarantine terms getting reported. So other than the quarantine terms, I mean, have any one of you noticed, like, we've added this exposure terms to Medra, so like a travel exposure to COVID or anything like that, you notice getting reported in your databases?
Yes. Yeah, we also get exposure to COVID terms have been reported. Again, this is majorly reported for non-COVID trials in the concomitant procedure section. There are quite a lot of data we are seeing in such scenarios.
And what do you do with the lab test? I mean, a lot of you did mention that you have the lab reports reported. So did you see any inconsistencies, or do you have lab reports positive, but there is no diagnosis of COVID-19? So do you see such scenarios quite often? I mean, I remember when I used to work in the industry, we used to see these, quite often, like, there is some inconsistencies where you kind of, pick up these things when you do the medical review. So do you see such inconsistencies as well now? I mean,
yes, even from a Medra coding standpoint in data management, we do see such scenarios, Anamika. As you rightly said, many a times you would only see a diagnostic procedure is being performed and the report is come out as positive, but you don't see the actual diagnosis being reported separately. So again, we do some kind of quality review outside of the regular coding cycle, or sometimes the review has been managed by the medical data review team, and that has been clarified to the site to make sure that the data reporting is accurate and appropriate in such scenarios.
Yeah, thank you. That was a nice discussion we had on the first question. And to sum up, what I noticed is we have a variety of terms reported. Some of you are seeing diagnosis, some of you seeing lab reports, indication, side effects, and of course off-label use as well, which is great. Carolyn, would you like to proceed with the next question?
Anamika,
Yes,
just to your question, we can add, like when COVID started, it was only respiratory symptoms, nasopharyngeal, right?
True.
But
True.
later it was even from diarrhea also, right? Which is very vague, children, especially in children, we used to see diarrhea being reported. So how do you do that? Like whether it is related to COVID or not, the patient goes to hospital with diarrhea, but you, as a standard procedure, hospital is doing COVID test and it finds positive. So this is a signal, and that's how data mining works. And you see the causality, exposure history, travel history surrounding, and see based on causality whether this is related or not. Similarly, even thromboembolic event, nobody expected that patient will have DIC or something like that. They'll be in ICU for that, right? And it's only respiratory they used to think, and pneumonia. So causality assessment plays a very vital role, like how we've been told.
Yeah, that's a very important and valid point, Sharath, and thank you for bringing that up.
Yes,
so let's move to the yes, Martin. Sorry.
Just to add on, the example of diarrhea with COVID-19 is a nice one, because it's also related to the knowledge of the symptoms in the general public. So nowadays you get the reports that people do have right away as AE diarrhea due to COVID-19, because this is now knowledge, and so people report it this way. So it develops.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Carolyn, would you like to take the next question for the panelist?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we already talked about the test results, but do you see other different trends to capture COVID-19 related events, like indications for use or drug supply issues, something like that? Dr. J, would you like to start?
I think he's muted.
Yes, he is muted.
We still don't hear you, Dr. J.
Yes, we were having some disruption in the connection. So this is a very good question. And, the answer to this question is yes, there were some different trends. And as far as the Indian subcontinent is concerned, during the starting phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, the people were struggling to cope with the terminologies like the indications, and the at that moment such terminologies were not there, and the international recent history of international travel, now such terminologies after creation of Medra, it became easy to address such issues and to capture such terms.
Thank you. Dr. Sharat, would you like to add something?
Yes, Karen, thank you. We are getting a specific request from clients, especially like what I told, MMP inhibitors or even antibiotics like azithromycin, where they want us to see or give an emphasis when we are doing signal analysis for specifically related to COVID. Like how effective they are in treating comorbid condition along with COVID, or are there any other effects due to them, or even side effects in that matter, to monitor that, especially for antihistamine or antibiotic group of class of drugs what we are monitoring actually. So which we are actively monitoring.
Thank you. Martin, what is your experience in this regard?
Yes, I think a very important concern of our patients, and what we got reported a lot, is their fear of risk of getting infected. So the exposure is reported also in our patient support programs a lot. So this is really one of their issues. And what we also see, which is impacted and is not separated from that fear, it's part of it, the last mile of the product getting to the patient. So actually, because the patient is in fear of going out to get it from the pharmacy or to get into the hospital, that is an issue. I remember a case where a patient reported that they couldn't get their the product from the hospital pharmacy because the hospital had put up access rules actually to access the hospital, and they couldn't get through that barriers actually into it to get their product. Things like that had happened. We coded that as a because somehow that was a circumstances that may lead to a medication error. This is something we added to this case. And that's one of the phenomena we saw with COVID especially. And last but not least, for our clinical trials we were doing at that time when it popped up, actually it was a huge concern and a huge logistics actually to take care of the safety of the patients. So everything changed with the pandemic. You can't bring in patients into study centers because you might threaten people. Well, they need to drive, they need to probably use public transport and things like that to get there. And that created a huge logistic problem or challenge for clinical trials to conduct. So that was a major concern on clinical trials level.
Thank you. Vivian, what is your experience in this field?
Yeah, I think other panel members have given a lot of examples in terms of different trends that we are seeing for reporting and the kind of terms we are getting. But maybe I can share a trend specifically in terms of the Medra coding and data collection perspective. So there are different approaches and new methodologies are being explored on handling Medra coding of COVID trials, especially for post-marketing studies. One such example being how we can utilize repositories created using predefined Medra terminologies and hierarchies from previous COVID trials. So how it happens or how it does it work? Predefined set of LLTs from these repositories will be available as drop-down values for the user. So the selection may be made either by patient himself if the entry is made to the devices, or by the site if telephonic collection is intended. So this approach could help improving coding efficiency and helps in real-time analysis. On the flip side, there could be issues and challenges with term selection as well, because all the trial participants may not be familiar with medical terminologies. So there are unique methodologies and innovative solutions like these are being introduced in coding, which can in fact help, as I said earlier, to fast track the overall process for data retrieval and analysis for the COVID trials, and especially for vaccine studies. So this is a different trend I am observing in terms of data collection and coding using Medra dictionary, only for post-marketing vaccine studies.
Thank you. I have an additional question that relates to the lab testing. So do you really query if you get positive lab test results for COVID-19? When they are reported vaguely, so when you don't know whether it's a PCR test or an antigen test result, or do you code as reported? Because a PCR test may be taken as it's a gold standard for diagnosing COVID-19. It could be taken as a diagnosis of COVID-19, but the antigen tests are not.
In data management coding, we do not specifically query to if it is an antigen versus RT-PCR test to clarify, but it's again based on specific customer requirements and the type of studies we are dealing with. As I said earlier, for non-COVID studies, if lab tests are reported and if corresponding diagnoses are not part of the adverse event page, yeah, definitely we create a query to get more clarification and confirmation on the same.
Mm-hmm. Any further comments from the panelists? Martin, how do you handle such report?
Yeah,
we go on.
We code as reported, and usually would not query, especially in the pharmacovigilance area, because a positive test would actually be sufficient to know for us. Concerning case processing, we would take this as a diagnosis, and it would be kind of evaluated in signal detection alike, because well, we have more things to talk about, the SMQ and things like that, but it's really used the same way. So a positive test would be analyzed and counted as if an infection would have been reported, worst case scenario assumption. And
both for the antigen test as well as for the PCR test? Any positive test?
Yes,
okay.
Because an antigen test is not as 100% reliable as the PCR, but it's showing the presence of the virus, doesn't it? So it's not an antibody, not the serum test. We have a different thinking about serum tests. When you think about hepatitis B, which type of antibody is that really an infection? No, that it isn't necessarily. It depends very much on what antibody you see. But the antigen test we would take as proof of presence of the virus, with limitations, 95% exactness, and if it's positive, and negative, we know doesn't tell you anything else than it didn't prove it. So the positive one is the true value to look after.
Thank you. Dr. J, would you like to add to this?
Madam, you have raised this pertinent question, and I think the correct diagnosis is important using the PCR test or the antibody test, but the PCR test is relatively better, and it will help in better understanding of the whole case narrative as well as in in identification of the signal arising out from any the complete ICSRs related to COVID-19 case. It will be helpful. Thank you.
Carol, to add on to that, like how Martin told, a rapid antigen test, if it's positive, it's positive. Okay, you don't have to think about it. But if you feel there are symptoms and there is a travel history there, if there is a travel history there, and then we would prefer RT-PCR, because if people, just to enhance that part, like antigen is like it can be nuclear protein or capsule protein. So the rapid antigen test just detects that, but PCR can take a small minute piece of antigen and multiply it many times. So that is more specific. That's the reason many of the places they accept only RT-PCR. So if we feel there is a history, causality is there, but symptoms are there, but they're not able to detect, then we will surely go for RT-PCR actually.
Thank you very much for your contributions here. And I hand back to Anamika.
Yeah, and I think we've been brought up a very interesting thing that about the trends that he's been noticing. So in continuation of that, which automatically lands up in our third question, which is like, have you developed any internal coding guidelines or best practices related to coding for handling of COVID-19 terms in your organization? Or any strategies, because I do understand that there could be a lot of challenges about resource availability, a lot of things which we never expected that this pandemic would have brought up. So anything which you have developed in your organization, we would like to hear about it. So Vibin, would you like to go first on this?
Yes, yeah. So Anamika, we have been following the guidance available from Medra to handle COVID-19 terms. So there are a few customers specifically wanted to include guidance on COVID-19 terms in coding DMP, which is also mostly as per the Medra guidance. However, we also have defined certain guidelines for term selection to ensure more specificity and a consistent approach, considering that we had to manage coding using the previous versions as well as the new versions of Medra, where COVID-19 related terms are included. Maybe I can share some examples wherein how to handle if COVID-related signs and symptoms are reported in non-COVID studies, which we already discussed, or how to handle if AE of COVID-19 along with signs and symptoms reported, but in a different reporting window. Then it may be indicate that it could be an AE of sequelae. So how do we handle such scenarios? Or how do you handle coding of adverse AE of special interest in COVID studies? So we have developed certain best practices and guidelines so that every other coder in the team, they manage, maintain a consistency for such cases. In addition, I think you have brought up a very important question in terms of how do we manage the resources and what are the other challenges. So we have implemented several best practices that could primarily have an impact on quality of source data reported by site, coding quality, consistency, efficiency improvement, and finally the timelines for coding delivery. Maybe if you look at the first one, the approach towards the startup process, a standard COVID package has been created to fast track the DMP development and initial setup and validation process. So this would also provide some level of guidance and consistency across COVID tiles, even from a customer standpoint. The other best practice we have implemented is providing inputs on ECRF design and setup, especially for trials in our control to restrict or to minimize issues with quality of source data collection for coding. Again, if I can take an example, how you deal with hard-coded verbatim terms, which may be ambiguous for coding, or different data types, for example, conditions and medications hard-coded under same panel, which we have seen many scenarios like that, which results in coding challenges, as we may have to use two different dictionaries from the same page. To avoid such issues, what we have done is we worked with the team on the initial ECRF design stage itself, so that we can ensure that such issues are being avoided from the beginning itself. And we could really see an impact on quality, autocode hit rate, and also reduction in coding queries for studies where this proactive approach was implemented. And one another best practice was providing specific guidance to the sites on appropriately reporting verbatim terms associated with COVID through ECRF completion guidelines. So this has been a great help in improving data quality and reducing coding queries again to a greater extent. One example I can talk about. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. You finish. I remember my question.
Okay. A common example being verbatim reported as coronavirus. So we have given clear instruction as part of the completion guidelines. To site has to specific. They have to be specific in terms of the type of coronavirus. Is it COVID-19? Is it SARS or is it MERS, etc., to facilitate accurate coding without going back to the site for clarification. And this is more relevant, for example, if it is part of non-COVID trials, which I was talking about. So these are some of the best practices we have implemented, which is supporting the regular coding principles, as well as cutting down the timelines and resource constraints, especially we as CRO that we have been encountering from the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, so Vibin, my question which I wanted to ask you was like about you brought up this thing about the CRAs, you're training the CRAs to report. So are you kind of giving them access to Medra as well? Like they're looking at the source and cleaning it first source without you creating the query at all. Is that happening? Do you see that trend too?
Honestly, we have not done that, Anamika, but I think it's a good point to explore in future what more we can do with that. But we haven't done that yet, but I think it's a good thought.
Okay. Oh, I actually asked you this question because at help desk I received this interesting query once when I support the help desk. There's someone who was on live chat and wanted to access the Medra dictionary with a clinical trial monitor. So I was like, oh, that's interesting that they wanted to know about Medra. So yeah, and you bringing up this, so it just fell in sync. So
yeah,
Martin,
exactly.
would you like to express your views on this?
Yes, I mean, concerning coding, we don't have our internal coding guidelines because we do use the points to consider, so the Medra term selection to the point, and when we have multiple options, actually our internal coding guidelines are just to pin down one of the options, so no difference there. And nothing company specific. What we actually do with these cases for COVID-19 terms, we do process the real COVID-19 infections as serious cases. So this is an internal convention because we are working in immunocompromised patients, and such an infection would be a serious threat potentially to those patients. So we decided to put this actually on our company IME list, so our important medical events list, and we will process these cases as serious. So this is our specific handling of COVID-19 terms or cases, rather. We have at CSL Behring, and other than that, for infections in general, we have a rule that we try to get the cause of the infection. So if it's pneumonia, and that's again due to the special products we're having, so we want to know what pathogen is behind that. We will never and already before COVID-19 would really be happy about the pneumonia, but we would want to know whether it's a fungal, whether it's bacterial, what virus, and because that makes a difference in our patients, and that's why we try to gather this information. In clinical trials, it's easier. It's part of the documentation Vibin explained. But in post-marketing, we try to query if feasible. But you know about the issues when querying in pharmacovigilance in post-marketing. It's a challenge on its own.
Thank you. Dr. Jayaprakash, would you like to add something from your end?
So, Dr. Anamika, now Pharmacovigilance Program of India had already the two types of the adverse drug reactions reporting form. One for the healthcare professionals and another for the consumers. And during the COVID-19 pandemic situation in the early stage, now based on these two types of the forms, we had come up with another suspected ADR reporting form to specifically deal for the comprehensive reporting of the adverse drug reactions on account of the prophylaxis and treatment. So that form had been rolled out to all the adverse drug reaction monitoring centers under the ambit of Pharmacovigilance Program of India, and we had given a personalized training through our colleagues, and so that they could fill up the right terminologies and do not face any problem. So that form had served the purpose for reporting of the ADRs on account of COVID-19. Moreover, the Immunization Technical Support Unit of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, we have the collaborative terms with them. So the case notification form that has been shortened, and through the Pharmacovigilance Program of India, it has also been brought to the notice of all the ADR monitoring centers across the country, so as to get the smooth reporting of the data on account of the COVID-19 drugs ADRs from throughout the country.
Thank you, Dr. Prakash. Yeah, that was a very good initiative, and a different kind of practice that in Ministry of Health and Family Welfare came up with. Now, coming back to the reports, I mean, I would just like to know how are you dealing with the suspected COVID-19 cases? A lot of terms getting reported, we see like COVID-like symptoms. So, are you creating queries, or are you kind of coding it to suspected COVID-19? What is the practice that you're following, and have you developed anything? I mean, I remember when you mentioned about some internal guidelines that you were trying to document. So did you kind of deal with this term, and how are you dealing with it in your organization?
Yeah, yes, and Amiga, yeah, go ahead.
So who has to respond, Dr. Anamika, to this question?
I guess Vipin was responding to it already.
Okay, so let me reply you. Now we have given the training before the vaccine drive had taken place in India, so that they capture the right things, and they keep a track in monitoring, collecting, and assessing the data related to capture of the ADRs on account of the vaccines. So we have given the training to the pharmacovigilance associates, deputy coordinators, the coordinators at different ADR monitoring centers under the ambit of the Pharmacovigilance Program of India.
So when there is a suspected cases like COVID-like reports, so are they querying, or are they kind of just applying the Medra code of suspected COVID-19 at your organization?
So right now they are using the Medra terminologies, but that during the initial stages it was difficult, and now gradually the people are getting the confidence in the better reporting of the adverse drug reactions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Vivin?
Thank you, sir. Vivin?
Yeah, yes, and Amiga, as you said, you can see suspected COVID-19 has a direct match in Medra dictionary. So most of the cases that would get auto-coded, and how we are dealing with such terms is purely based on the type of studies we are conducting, whether it is a COVID study or a non-COVID study. And also what we have observed is different customers have different requirements. So in this scenario, we are purely going with customer specifications and the type of studies we are following. So otherwise, that would get automatically coded, and we would not be querying that unless it is specified to be
Unless
taken against
reported as suspected COVID-19, of course, it has a direct match, but the COVID-like symptoms do not have. So when the reports are like COVID-like symptoms, I mean, are you querying or are you kind of coding it off? What is the practice that you follow?
Yeah, it's again, if it is a non-COVID study and if a COVID-like symptoms are reported, we query and ask for a confirmation, and that is what most of the customers are also asking us to do.
Okay, and very often we see like for the COVID-19, the fatigue symptoms are getting reported, and we are also talking about long COVID. So when you have these kind of reports, especially when there are provisional, I understand like all of you said that you kind of complying with the Medra term selection points to consider document, but we do also have this thing in the PTC, like if there's a provisional diagnosis, we also have an alternative option. So we would like to know what is the practice, I mean, especially like when the symptoms are not understood, like of long COVID. So if you have symptoms of fatigue along with the medical history of COVID-19, so how are you dealing with it? Are you querying it, or how are you splitting it or coding it, or how are you doing it at your organizations?
In what we have seen, Anamika, as you said, I think I've mentioned this earlier also, we have seen many cases of fatigue as a symptom of COVID, but we have not seen getting this reported from a long-term point of view or to be associated with long COVID. But in general, we have been coding it to fatigue, and we have never used a code of long COVID for such scenarios yet.
Okay.
Anamika, to add on to that, now if you have seen, we had seen few patients with almost 6 months or a year of not a year, like at least 6 months of continuous still cough is present, breathlessness or dyspnea is present, or even myalgia or walking difficulties, right? Now, how I told earlier, COVID is in COVID, the more dangerous is our body's reaction to virus than actual virus. So in these people, what they have seen is due to this pneumonia and ongoing onslaught by our own body acting against us, there is a lot of fibrosis in lungs, for example. Okay. And like to answer your question, if there is a COVID history, and after 4 or 5 months, an old age person tells that he is breathless and he's unable to walk, or he feels he used to do earlier jogging or running and now he's unable to do that. And that can be related to COVID based on causality and the mechanism of action which is underlying there. It can cause fibrosis, which is irreversible. Probably you might have to give steroids or something to suppress further movement, but you can't get it back. Similarly, myalgia or effect on joints, this needs to be studied, but only problem is very few patients are there for reporting this. So we have to do a thorough medical justification or check whether what is the underlying mechanism in these cases.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes, Martin.
I think that's a very valid point, because we do code based on what is reported. So that's one side. So we would code the symptoms, and if somebody said I have COVID-like symptoms and I'm going to get my test tomorrow, well, then that's suspected COVID-19, because it's clear from the scenario. I have COVID-like symptoms alone would probably be the worst case scenario coding. Yes. Why do they report this? Why do they use the verbatim like that? And with the fatigue ongoing for 10 months after, if it's explicitly reported as a consequence, yes, we would use that. But if it's just the fatigue and the correlation is not made by the reporter, we would not make this a basis of coding. This would probably be part of the medical assessment and commented accordingly, but not subject of coding. So this would be our approach in case processing.
Basically, you will be careful while using the term of long COVID or post-COVID, acute post-COVID-19 syndrome, right?
Yes, we would use it if reported.
Yeah, thank you. In the absence of more focused, Medra codes for COVID-19 before 23 version came into place, did you face any challenges coding the COVID-19 terms? If so, what were they, and how did you deal with them? Like,
Anamika, I think last year March when it started, there is a sudden surge in increase in viral pneumonia, and we used to get patients where old age people with comorbid condition turning, even in UK, like from Jan onwards, actually Jan Feb, where they were negative for any other viruses, SARS or anything, but influenza virus, but they had this COVID symptoms. So these need to be coded. So it was like viral pneumonia, suspected coronavirus, because it was just picking up. We don't know what to do. So our organization had prepared a list of codes or terms which can be used to, segregate or to help the coder, to understand better, to in the comorbid condition or the background with the travel history, or something is there to correlate. But I think when in September, it was a very primitive document, and but when in September Medra released the new version with detailed terminologies, I think that issue was solved actually from our end.
so did you mark those terms? Because it's very difficult to, kind of, when a dictionary upgrade happened, how did you, do you develop any strategy so that it automatically upgrades to the new version, or did you do a full review of your terms to find out? Because it's a challenge, right, before the terms were available.
See, normally in clinical research, normally they keep the same dictionary to avoid confusion till the end of the trial, right? But in this case, there was some update done, but I don't know how much was updated, because like how I told, which is obvious, like viral pneumonia is there and there is a travel history, or there is some history or some relation to COVID, which is positive. So we have taken that as a COVID itself. So there was not much need of recoding it actually.
Okay. Any last minute comments from our panelists on this question?
Yeah, just to confirm on what Sharas just said, we also have not recoded it, but when things were reported in November 2019 or between November 2019 and May 2020 until the COVID-19 specific terms were available, we used coronavirus infection or suspected coronavirus infection and viral pneumonia and things like that. And those terms are actually still in the SMQ for COVID-19. So there was no real need for it from the signal detection purpose. You just need to have them in the SMQ and take them for what they are. This was an easy thing, though the situation per se was a real challenge, really in that time frame, and it was really good that Medra was updated, even though it was a difficult thing of re-releasing 23.0, but it was required for that situation to minimize the amount of data that would have been the in-between, in the shadow of it being a new thing. So that's very welcome, though it was a challenge to do that on such a short notice.
Short notice, yeah, and also we had lesser time for implementation, I guess. So, but yeah, thank you for that. I mean, yeah, I guess it's time to move on to the next section, and I think automatically with Martin's comments, we land up there. And so the COVID-19 SMQ.
Hello, Anamika. Sorry to interrupt, but we have actually 5 or 6 minutes left for the meeting, so I think we'll have to stop for the
I understand.
To answer the questions from the attendees. Actually, we've got some comments and questions during your very active discussions. Would it be all right if I read it out some?
Yes, please, Yuni. I think that is good.
Yeah, some of the attendees also contributed our question. For example, like they also frequently have COVID-19 pneumonia reports, respiratory infections, and even respiratory failures. And some also commented that they also faced challenges in coding COVID-19 vaccine reports already. And one question was asked about what kind of COVID-19 terms reported related to COVID pregnancy or pregnant woman with the COVID positive. Has anyone had any reports specific like this?
So any of our panelists had any experience with such reports? Uni, would you like to read the question again? Maybe.
Yeah, questions was about the COVID pregnant woman with the COVID positive related reports.
We have not received anything like that.
Yeah, I guess it's not so frequent, I guess.
Well, I have seen at least one case where we had a transmission of the pregnant mother to the child. So I can remember that. But this is just a COVID-19 case. It's happening, isn't it? Pregnant women are subject to infection, and we know it passes on to the child. So there are respective codes available in general, and I think there's some with 24.0. There will be some updates, especially on that section. There's a handful of new terms available there, then isn't there?
Yeah, thank you. And we also got some questions related to how to code COVID-19 related events, for example, like COVID-19 related COVID-19 prophylaxis and relapse or reinfections. But I think our next agenda sort of will address some of the questions. So will we move on to the next agenda for browser demonstration of COVID-19 terms in Medra?
Yeah, I think that is that would be the right thing to do. So, yeah, okay. I guess we should hand over the presentation to Carol Ann now. And
yeah,
would you make me presenter, Yoni?
Yes, I will do so.
By the way, I'd like to take a minute to thank all our panelists today for joining in. So. It was an interesting discussion, and I'm sorry that we couldn't, conclude the entire discussion because of time constraint. But nevertheless, thank you so much for your contributions and for sharing your experiences. It was much appreciated. Over to Carolyn.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so just a few definitions first, but before going into the switching to the browser, maybe you are aware already the WHO has provided us with a classification of the adverse events following immunization. That's the general term that is used for all these events that occur in timely relationship to a vaccination. And please be aware that this says nothing about causal relationship. It could just be, it's just timely relationship. And there are 5 subtypes, and they are defined. And if you'd like to learn more about it, here's the reference to the respective website. So there's the vaccine product-related reactions, the vaccine quality defect-related reactions. These, of course, have a causal relationship to the vaccine. Then there are immunization error-related reactions, immunization anxiety-related reactions, and the coincidental events. So the vaccine reactions are reactions of the individual to the properties of the vaccine, causing an injury or condition. And we have the vaccine product-related reactions and the vaccine quality defect-related reactions. The vaccine product-related reactions are reactions that occur with a good quality vaccine that meets all specifications, and the vaccine quality defect related reactions are those which occur due to quality defects of the vaccine. There are mild reactions, mostly immunogenicity reactions, so the expected, desired response to the vaccination by the vaccinee. So these are the mild reactions. And then there are the severe reactions like anaphylaxis, for instance, or long-term complications, autoimmune disorders that cannot be considered as mild and cannot be considered as normal, so to say, normal reactions of the vaccinee. Immunization error-related reactions really can be prevented, because these are errors that occur during the usage of the vaccine, during preparation, handling, storage, or administration. And you see some examples here: injection at incorrect site leading to vaccination site pain or even nerve damage or joint damage, etc. And the immunization anxiety-related reactions, these relate not to the vaccine itself, but to anxiety, injection anxiety. So patients that have an anxiety of injections. And because of the fact that these may relate to really very different reactions that could also be vasovagal mediated reactions, etc. A new term is now proposed by the WHO. It's an immunization stress-related response. So something more general that would also cover other reactions, not just only the anxiety. And the coincidental events occur after administration or during administration of the vaccine, but are not caused by the vaccine or its administration. So with this, now let me switch to the browser. Here it is. I log in into the web-based browser in this instance. And if you look into the injury, poisoning, and procedural complications SOC and select the procedural related injuries and complications, NEC HLGT, you see the HLT vaccination related complications. And this is the most important HLT to look at when it comes to the complications that are related to the vaccination. And you see the adverse event following immunization on the top. So this is the more general term that you could use for vaguely reported immunization reactions. In addition, you see more specific ones, like the immunization reaction. The immunization reaction is really the reactogenicity reaction. So the usual, expected, desired reaction of the patient to the immunization, like fever, like reactions at the vaccination site, like myalgia. These are the immunization reactions. Then we have the vaccination complication. So these are not to be considered the usual expected reactions in the patient, but are really complications of the vaccination. This would be, for instance, anaphylaxis. And in addition to that, we have the post-vaccination syndromes, so more vaguely reported syndromes that occur sometimes long-term after the vaccination, like the Guillain-Barré syndrome, for instance, for rabies vaccines. Something like that can be used. If you get such a report, you can use the post-vaccination syndrome. Of course, you may need to split some of these terms. If you get a Guillain-Barré syndrome and you suspect that this has something to do with a previous vaccination, it's not just sufficient to code it to post-vaccination syndrome. You would also need to select a respective term for the Guillain-Barré. And the same holds true for other PTs that you can select from, like the immunization anxiety-related reaction. There may be a broad spectrum of these anxiety-related reactions, and you may want to split and not only capture the immunization anxiety-related reaction, but the actual symptoms, signs and symptoms in the patient as well. Same holds true for the medication error-related reactions. Here you would need to look again into the injury, poisoning and procedural complications SOC, but here you would need to split and look into the medication errors and other product use errors and issues, HLGT, and then look, for instance, for product administration errors and issues. And you will find a lot of vaccination terms in there, like expired product administered. Here you see expired vaccine used, something like that. So you would need to capture both the medication error as well as the actual reaction in the patient after this medication error, if an overdose is administered, for instance. In addition, we have the product quality related reaction. Here, again, you would need to, again, split and select suitable term in the product issues system organ class. Here we have them. So you may be encountering a counterfeit product of a vaccine. You may also see a packaging counterfeit. So we have some of these terms here. You will not find very specific vaccine terms, but you can use the product terms. And the same holds true for other manufacturing, laboratory controls issues, or product contamination, sterility issues. All of these may also be relevant for the vaccines. And if you have such a quality issue with a vaccine, then of course you would also need to split and capture both the quality issue and the reactions in the patient. And last but not least, we would also need to look into the general SOC. Under the administration site reactions, you will find many, many terms for the vaccination site reactions. So for the local reactions that can be observed at the vaccination site, you see a long list here with lots of different reactions you can choose from. So this was all that I wanted, very short. I hope you found it useful. And in the presentation that you will see, you will get also for this user group meeting, you will also have some references, useful references to further explore this area, also provided by the WHO. And also, it was already mentioned by Brian that we will have an European user group meeting that also addresses this topic that may be useful for you if you're working in this area. With this, I hand back to Uni.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this is the summary slides that Karen has prepared, and these are the reference slides that she just was mentioning.
Yeah, I wanted to speed up.
So finally, this brings us to all the question and answer sessions. May I also ask all the panelists to turn on your cameras again, just to wrap it up both sessions. So there were some questions posed during the session. One simple question asked how to code COVID relapse or reinfections. I think there's a term, COVID-19 recurrent, right, Karen?
Yes, there is COVID-19 recurrent.
Mm-hmm.
It's grouped under PT COVID-19.
Yeah. So in this instance, you may use this LOT. Next question. How should we code for reported event of vaccine administered to patient who has HIV? And this was actual medication error?
Yeah, it's a difficult question.
Is that the exact verbatim reported?
Yeah, it may be contraindication. Then it could be contraindicated product used.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how the verbatim has reported, and by the scenario you that was posed here, it's not really clear that it was medication error or not. So, moving on to the next question: how do we handle COVID-19 related terms in the older Medra versions? For example, in COVID-19 prophylaxis, we already have this code in the present version, but not in the 20.0 version. What should we do to handle this?
Best thing is to upgrade the latest version.
Yeah, but as Martin mentioned, it's included in the SMQ as well.
Yeah.
Some panelists, some audience were asking, could we please be sent the slides? Do we prepare these slides to post, Brian?
Yes, so we'll get a copy of the slides from Anamika. We'll be posting this information on the Medra website.
With that, just received one more question. How to code shortness of breath due to COVID-19, or do we need to raise a query in this case? Shortness of breath due to COVID-19.
For me, this would be COVID-19 plus symptoms, shortness of breath.
Yeah, that's how we usually deal with it, right? When there is a diagnosis and a symptom when it's not confirmed, so we would definitely code it to the symptom and the diagnosis. So that is the best way of handling it. I mean, some organizations, I remember when I used to work in the industry, we used to have this standard practice of querying and then, code it to the confirmed diagnosis. But here it's already mentioning due to COVID-19. Now, if it is reported in the medical history, people might take a different approach, but most feel like it is good to code it to both so that you don't lose out on your event.
This is a preferred option, provided by the PTC document for term selection. So you may also decide to select the confirmed diagnosis plus all signs and symptoms, but this would be the alternative option. You have the choice.
And you have always this issue with electronic clinical trials where you would have to ask the investigator to split the line if you want to have both, but else you usually would use the diagnosis, the final diagnosis for coding in that scenario.
Right.
Yeah, even I can agree with what Martin said. I think most of the scenarios we would code to COVID-19, the diagnosis, if it is reported together. But it is also related to one of the example I mentioned earlier. Sometimes we may have to look at the reporting window. If you see that COVID-19 is reported separately, and again COVID-19 along with the shortness of breath, which is reported in a separate reporting window, you have to look at the start and stop date. That means it could be an AE of sequelae. In that case, you have to treat this separately and code it differently.
True.
Yep, that's all the questions that we have received during the presentation. Thank you for all your contribution, and can now move.
Okay. All right, well, why don't we move to close the meeting? First of all, let me thank all of our panelists and guest speakers, and we appreciate all of the feedback we received from our attendees. We will be sending out a survey for this meeting to help us understand what topics are of relevance for future meetings and to improve the overall presentation and information provided in user group meetings. So on behalf of the MSSO and our invited speakers and panelists, I thank you very much for attending the Medra user group meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.